I want to talk about Tucker Carlson's interview with Kyle Rittenhouse, an interview that was fascinating because while we saw Rittenhouse on the stand, that is a more choreographed performance. You have Rittenhouse, who undoubtedly had been prepared by his attorneys through direct examination. He was obviously under the gun in cross examination. So you didn't really see Kyle Rittenhouse himself. You didn't get a real window into what he was like, his personality. And that was what the cool thing about the interview. You saw Kyle Rittenhouse be Kyle Rittenhouse. And the first thing that struck me about it is here is actually a really nice guy. In fact, here is a guy who is understated. Here's a guy who does not seem puffed up, doesn't seem to want to push a point, is very gentle and even generous. Asked about, Biden's lies. Think about it. You got the president of the United States vilifying you. And you would think that you would see a kind of seething bitterness coming out of Kyle Rittenhouse after a teenager being blasted from the president on down. But no, he's like, well, I kind of wish Biden would kind of go back and really watch the trial. He might get a different view. So ordinarily, I'm a little bit scornful of seasoned Republicans talking as if the main problem is that Democrats don't know enough. And if we only give them the data and show them the pictures, they will see the light. But this is not surprising coming from an 18-year-old, coming from Kyle Rittenhouse. So I don't hold it against Rittenhouse. To me, in some ways, the most interesting part of the interview was when Rittenhouse said, not exactly that he's a fan of BLM. He didn't say that. But what he said is, look, I support Black Lives Matter, the concept. And he also said, I support their right to protest. I think what he was doing is drawing a distinction between a peaceful protest for a cause, for reform, which of course is part of our right in a democratic society, and violent rioting, threatening people's neighborhoods, burning their stores. And his point was, you got to draw the line. And the cops weren't there; they weren't helping. Now, again, Rittenhouse was understated. Maybe they were really busy. Maybe they had too many demands on their time. No, in fact, the situation is far worse. The authorities, the governor was offered aid and turned it down. The cops were basically called back in order to enable the rioters. So something far more insidious was going on, and Rittenhouse didn't see the full depth of the depravity of it. But he did see himself as wanting to help, being part of the solution, offering medical aid and so on. And at one point, Rittenhouse says, and this is the part that startled me the most, is he said in effect that he was a beneficiary of privilege. Now, he didn't say white privilege, but he implied that, look, we got to support BLM because A, we know about prosecutorial misconduct, and boy, am I on board with that one. I think that is systematic in our society. Of course, it affects whites no less than blacks. We see it with the January 6th defendants. We see it all over the place. Basically, you can't trust the system anymore. There are just as many crooks with badges in the system as there are probably crooks on the street. And you saw this with Binger, the prosecutor. You got the impression if that guy could get Rittenhouse, he would do it no matter what. If he could have planted evidence, he'd be happy to do it. And so you've got a thoroughly corrupt gang going after this kid. And I don't blame him. He's seen the system up close. And think of how sad it must be to feel kind of screwed by your own lawyers while you've got a ruthless adversary trying to put you away for life. But Rittenhouse says that, you know what, I had a defense fund, I had a couple of $1 million, I could hire good attorneys. Not everybody can do that. And he gave the idea that he was in this respect a little bit privileged. I mean, look, here, what I found was so touching about it is here's a kid from a lower middle class family. Here is a kid who is white, whose career aspiration is to go to college and get his nursing degree so he can become a nurse. I don't know if Kyle Rittenhouse fully realized that he's got two big strikes against him. One, he's white, and two, he's lower middle class. And that makes him, from the point of view of the left, the ultimate target. That's why you saw this relentless attack on him as a white supremacist, because it's difficult to portray some, Yale graduate who's white as a white supremacist unless you actually have documentary evidence. But with Kyle Rittenhouse, it's an assumption. Here you got a kid with the baseball cap turned back to front. Here you got a kid in a t-shirt with an AR-15. He's got to be a white supremacist. What else would he be? So if Kyle Rittenhouse were black, he wouldn't get this. He wouldn't get this unified, sustained, year-long attack. And think of it, the purpose of that was to poison the public mind so that, in effect, every jury would find him guilty. And I think it is a stunning vindication of justice. I agree with Kyle Rittenhouse that sort of God is on his side. Someone was looking out for him that day, in which the jury saw really based on the video evidence. Think of the debt we owe here to the videographers who, and by the way, these were not New York Times videographers. These were basically conservative videographers. I had Drew Hernandez on this show. Basically, he's a youth pastor with a camera and with a video camera who decides to take an Uber to Kenosha and helps to save Kyle Rittenhouse's life. Wow. So these days, good deeds are not coming out of our institutions. They're coming out of ordinary people who show heroism, in this case, Hernandez and Rittenhouse. When Rittenhouse recreated the scene in Kenosha, it was a Hobbesian state of nature. We saw it on the video, and he evoked it beautifully in the interview. Hobbes says that in the state of nature, life is nasty, brutish, and short. And I think when we look at these Antifa guys, particularly Joseph Rosenbaum and Anthony Huber, these were two brutish, nasty guys. And thanks to Kyle Rittenhouse, their trouble, all the danger that they exposed society to, was cut short.